it's a pleasure to be here with you today, guys. And I am going to present like very controversial topics is about sexual abuse in Arabic fiction. This presentation is just a spotlight about my bigger project that I am working on, which is the sexual abuse in Arabic fiction. So what I'm going to present is just like examples about this phenomena in Arabic fiction. I would like to start this presentation with saying that fiction is an important key to understanding society's suffering and ambitions. Fiction elements such as characters, plots, time, point of view, and setting are able to highlight the psychological impact of many sociological phenomena such as sexual abuse. For example, I would like to bring some examples from American fiction. So, for example, Toni Morrison in her novel, The Bluest Eye, illustrates the seriousness of the sexual abuse by internalizing the suffering of the black child protagonist, Bucola, who was raped by her father while her breadwinner mother was super busy. Toni Morrison highlights the psychological impact of the child's sexual abuse and portrays the extreme poverty. And the same thing could be said about William Faulkner in his novel, As I Lay Dying. So the sexual abuse is one of the most brutal events in this novel. And the same thing could be said about, for example, Joyce Carol Oates' writings, especially her short story collection, Marriage and Infidelities. And the same thing could be said about Arab novelists and short story writers who shed light on the psychological effect of the sexual abuse. Importantly, Arabic fiction highlights this phenomena in three ways. Number one, sexual abuse as a patriarchal system practice. Number two, sexual abuse as a social disease. Number three, sexual abuse as a war weapon. And the presentation is divided into three parts based on this types of sexual abuse topics. However, Arabic fiction differently presents and documents this phenomena based on the socio-economic structure of Arab countries, which are different from one country to another. Number one, sexual abuse as a patriarchal system of practice. Arabic fiction explores this phenomena as an oppressive practice of the patriarchal system, such as testing virginity, to measure the purity of the female body, which symbolizes the honor of tribes' males. Number two, forced marriage, cousin and child marriage, a practice in which the female body is communal property that is distributed among tribes' males. Number three, mutilation of the female body in two types, female genital mutilation and infibulation. And this infibulation, it means pharaonic mutilation, which is named in Arabic khitam far'ani. And there are many writings about that. I will pick for this topic just one writer, is a Yemeni writer. This writer, his name is Muhammad al-Gharbi Umran, and he highlights this phenomena, and I'm going to pick this short story collections titled Khitan Balqis. It means genital mutilation, Balqis genital mutilation. He actually highlights this phenomena from the title. So Balqis is a religious and historical figure. Balqis, it means the Queen of Sheba. And he highlights this sexual abuse towards Balqis. And he used Balqis as a symbol of Yemeni female's body. I would like to highlight in this presentation one short story from this short story collection. The title of this short story is Khitan Balqis. It means it has the same title that the collection story has. And he internalized in this short story the 10-year-old female protagonist suffering from inhuman tribal penalty when she was caught innocently playing with a boy at her age. The little girl was imprisoned alone in a locked, dark, small, cold room for 3 nights, away from her mother, who abandons her and cooperates with 2 other tribal women for testing her virginity. As this scene explores this ordeal. On the 4th night, 3 women entered the room, approaching you. So here the narrator addressing the protagonist. At that time, you realized that she was one of them. Even you could not distinguish their features in the dark. You were looking for her scents. The narrator talking about the daughter's feeling towards her mother. They took off your clothes piece by piece and laid you on the ground, naked, ignoring your severe fear. Their cold fingers cause goosebumps in your skin, and their ragged breaths blow your nose in silence. They separated your legs. One of them held your hands. The other one held onto your feet, and the third put her palm on your navel, below your belly, above your pubes. Everything was shivering. They were hardly inserting a cold, solid object in you. You discovered later that they were shoving a virgin chicken's egg. Their fingers did not stop while you were crying out. Suddenly, they left you on the ground to stand lynching, tangled ululation. Gunshots ring out around the village. End of quote. Obviously, the second-person narrator explores the tribal judgment towards the female child body. Furthermore, the male narrator's voice, united with pitiful protagonist's inherent voice, to condemn the barbaric tribal ritual that pushes the mother at the end of the story to kill her daughter for washing the tribe's honor. Number 2, sexual abuse as social diseases. Arabic fiction discusses this phenomena as a social diseases that occurs from child rape, child molestation, and incest. For example, Yusuf al-Hamid, Saudi novelist, in his allegorical novel Al-Qarura, it means the perfume bottle, he examines a different side of the sexual abuse through different practice of the patriarchy, which legalize, for example, the marital rape, child rape, under many masculine banners such as forced marriage, child marriage, and cousins marriage. Furthermore, the novel internalizes other masculine social diseases such as sexual harassment, sexual insult, and incest. For instance, the following scene, which is through the female protagonist's consciousness, explores the suffering of her friend Nabila, a journalist and a women's rights advocate who herself was raped by her father. Quote, she said, it means Nabila, she said that her father travels with her as a mahram, and I will stop to highlight what does that mean, mahram. She said that her father travels with her as a mahram. He did that 2 years ago in Abu Dhabi. He stayed with her in the hotel in 2 separate and adjacent rooms, but he did not stop knocking at her door at night like a passerby. He entered looking for warmth, then he came out victorious and defeated altogether. He does not look in her eyes directly. He runs away in the morning, leaving her all the time to attend and participate in the conference workshops. He is the only mahram authorized by her mother to travel with her, take care of her, and check on her sleeping in the 5-star hotel rooms, so that she will not be harassed by others. End of a quote. The scene perfectly marks the social system that pointed to the mahram, the male guardian, as a female body protector. It marks the stereotypical male and presents the real image of the foxy father who did not protect the protagonist from the outdoor foxes, but himself was a predator who devoured his own daughter in her bed. The other example I would like to highlight in this presentation too, Layla Al-Uthman, a Kuwaiti short story writer and novelist. She actually wrote boldly about sexual abuse in her writings. I would like today to highlight only her short story collection. It happens every night. So يحدث كل ليلة. I would like to highlight two short stories from this short story collection because the first one highlights the child sex trafficking, and the other one highlights child molestation. The first short story, titled Women Genitals, explores the suffering of a poor child girl protagonist who was subjected to sexual harassment as the following scene. Quote, the pretty little girl slapped the door in the boy's face. She ran with tears to her mother who was in the kitchen. Mommy, Sleimanu punched me. She pointed at the red spot on her white arm. Her mother, who was busy beating the dough with both of her hands, took a quick glance at the arm while she tried to appease her. His cursed parents, tomorrow I will discipline him. The child heard her mother and was encouraged to tell more. 2 days ago I was beaten by Fedan. Hamoud was always trying to kiss me, and Swalih trapped me in the hallway and raised my dress up. All girls and boys don't love me. Don't let me play with them. They turn away from me and call me arsenic. End of quote. The narrator in the following scene reflects the stereotypical image of the motherhood. Quote, the innocence of the 10-year-old girl spread the news of the repeated attacks on her. She was assured that her mother would discipline Sleimanu in order to protect her from every hand and tongue. End of quote. However, the following scene explores the mother's action, the antagonist, who turned from a protector to a predator when she trapped her little daughter for using her body as a commodity to sell it to whoever pays more. Quote, the mother's palm had cooled off from kneading. She pondered and looked at her child. Her eyes wandered to explore her daughter's face, chest, legs, and hair. She could not believe that the child prematurely had won all this beauty. Thoughts spilled in her mind, desire caught fire in her heart. At night, she sympathized with her little daughter, rubbed her cheeks with some perfume, wiped tenderly her head, and started telling her a story about the beautiful poor girl whom all girls hated and were jealous of her beauty. That night, the mother netted the trade conspiracy. She taught her daughter the lesson that was not difficult. Every beautiful gift has a price. A pinch is worth a quarter of a dinar. A bite is worth half a dinar. A kiss is worth a dinar. If the edge of the dress is raised up in desire for something more delicious, the price is 10 dinars. End of a quote. Al-Uthman highlights in the other short story, happens every night, which is after the title of this short story collection. She highlights the child molestation. The male protagonist, the narrator, explores through the flashback techniques the aggressive manner of the molester and his absolute power on the protagonist as follows. A quote, on that day, I was confined by him under a pergola in their house. He forced me to look at him sodomizing their little goat, trying to stimulate my feeling toward him. The goat's torment diverted me from everything. I vomited, I ran to my mother and told on him. After days, I knew that his father cauterized his genitalia to discipline him. End of the quote. The last section in this presentation, sexual abuse as war's weapon. Arabic fiction depicts sexual abuse as a war's weapon when ISIS brutal practice targeted both female and male bodies, such as the castration of children, sex slave, child rape, and the trafficking of sex slaves. For example, Warid Badr Salim, an Iraqi novelist and short story writer, in his novel Virgin of Sinjar, Adra Sinjar, mirrored the transformation of Sinjar's besieged village by ISIS from a utopian city to dystopian city. The narration reflects the details of this siege where the peaceful old men and women were executed and little girls and boys were taken as slaves of ISIS caliphate. Importantly, the novel was narrated by ISIS female victims to portray this human catastrophe, such as female sex slaves, trafficking sex slaves, child rape, and body mutilation. I mean, FGM and children castration. Number 1, child rape. The narration mirrored children's sexual abuse through the allegorical protagonist Neshtiman. Neshtiman, actually, it is a Kurdish Yazidi name. It means homeland, it means country, it means home. So this allegorical protagonist Neshtiman is a female child who was kidnapped by ISIS. She symbolizes besieged Sinjar. The following scene explores a child rape through Neshtiman's aunt's voice, who was pleading ISIS Amir, the prince of the militant group in ISIS, for not raping her niece. Quote, "But she is a child, Amir. She has not yet menstruated. She is my brother's daughter, who was raised in my lap. Her mother died while delivering her. Her father is missing. No news about him. I am her aunt, Amir. She cannot bear marriage. She is a child." End of the quote. Another practice is sex slave trafficking. The chapter titled Sex Slave Market at the Forest mirrors the detail of the sex slave trafficking through Abu Ukasha's character, the ISIS militant, who was looking for a little girl to buy from the children sex slaves market, which was located at Mosul city. By the way, forest is not like metaphorical name. It's a real place in Mosul. Mosul is a city in Iraq and was taken over by ISIS. And there is a place in Mosul, it's named Forest. It means Al-Ghabat. The following scene includes dialogue between Abu Ukasha, who is about buying a 13-year-old girl, and the sex slave girl's broker, which reflect the ISIS sexual commodification of children's bodies. Quote, "Abu Ukasha paid $50 and signed the receipt to receive the girl. The girl began weeping. The accountant gave him a receipt, a possession document, and a marriage contract from which he did not read anything and said to him, 'This girl's first sale was for $600. But the market is now down.'" End of quote. And actually, this picture is real. This picture. This is their prices. But this is fiction. So this fiction reflects this actual tragic event. This is exactly to complete the whole scene for you guys. So the following scene includes the dialogue between Abu Ukasha and the female owner of the sex slave girls. Quote, The morbid, obese woman took the rest of the girls back to the shelter and asked Abu Ukasha for a few minutes for the girl for packing a few things and saying goodbye to her peers. With the morbid, obese woman, the girl came back carrying in her hand a black plastic bag. When the obese woman wished Abu Ukasha happiness with the little girl, Abu Ukasha responded. So here is like a very dark irony in his response. O sister, it is an act of worship and a prayer to God. Our life is short, no matter how long, so God Almighty may write it in the balance of our good deeds. End of the quote. Castration, children castration. I would like to alert you guys, this is like very aggressive scene. On chapter titled Christina, the narrator reflects a European lady who was bitterly with the tearful eyes watching on the TV screen Yazidi children's castration by ISIS in order to make them eunuchs. The narrator describes this scene as follows, quote, There was a small room with one closed window. There were more than 10 naked children laid up on their backs upon one sheet, all crying. Their naked little fingers, genitalia, were shrinking and their faces screaming. There are interweaving voices in the scene, obscured by the constant screaming of children. More than one man appears in front of the cell phone camera with a trembling hand, who appears to photograph the scene. One of them approaches and says in Arabic as if he is shouting, Castration of Yazidi children is a religious and Sharia duty. Then he withdraws from the front of the camera and then comes back to cram his nose in front of the cell phone camera lens and adds, They are slaves of our caliphate. Thick urine rulers and scissors appear. Scissors cut strings of unequal length, but no more than a palm's length. Strings were distributed to 4 or 5 men who were walking back and forth, and some of whom were laughing. The crying of children does not stop. The 4 men bend over the first 4 children. The cell phone's camera is rotating to the other side of the spotlight on 3 veiled women who were observing silently. The unskilled photographer seems to have taken a position so close to the first man who grabbed the testicle of the first child and put thick string around it, then rubbed it and strongly tied it. The child screaming rose bitterly until he almost suffocated from crying. At the same moment, screams escalated when the other 3 children's testicles were strongly tied by thread until the tendon